Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Adrian, and I will be talking about my research on aesthetics, hegemony, and counter-hegemony. So when I talk about aesthetics, I want to preface and say na I'm not just referring to the visual, no? When I talk about aesthetics, I talk about everything that affects the bodily senses. The things that you could hear, you could physically feel, you could smell, you could taste, no? And these things, the body, the affect, they're not usually things that are involved when you talk about aesthetics kapag related siya sa fine arts. Kasi para sa kanila, ang fine arts, ang aesthetics, ay dapat separate, no? Elevated from everyday life and its functions, divorced from its context, from structures, from history, from politics, etc. In this way, no, I ask the question, what does the aesthetic tell us about the structures that shape our lives as individuals in a society? Basically, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reinscribe the aesthetic, the political, the economic, and the material, no? Tinatry kong i-connect ulit at i-locate ulit. Paano ba tayo physically naapektuhan ng usapin ng politika, ng economics, no? Hindi lang siya cognitive, hindi lang siya abstract. Physical din siya. And I am guided by concepts and arguments and ideas from these theorists. Primarily, yung idea ni Bourdieu ng preference and taste as something that's social rather than individual, no? Sabi niya sa discussion niya on symbolic power na symbolic power passes off culture and taste as something that's just personal, individual, no? And this idea, this narrative serves to naturalize, to legitimize certain ideas and values and beliefs in a society. Basically, yung pangit at maganda, para kay Bourdieu, hindi lang siya preference, no? Reflections din siya ng current cultural and political ideology na hegemonic o dominant sa isang konteksto, sa isang sitwasyon, sa isang panahon, sa isang period. So, basically, what is regarded as beautiful, pleasant, desirable, and ugly or bad and undesirable are aesthetic judgments that, according to Pau, serve to further obscure power relations and social inequality while at the same time enhancing and naturalizing class distinctions. So in this way, mahalaga din para sa akin yung konsepto ng hegemony and counter-hegemony ni Gramsci, no? Yung strategy at tactics ni Deserto. And I employ, no, these concepts, these ideas, these theories through ethnography. So our archival analysis, derivae or getting lost, and direct observation. So ano ba yung neoliberal ideology at neoliberal aesthetics? Ano yung itsura ng neoliberal hegemony sa aesthetics ng city? Rather than any definite architecture or landscaping or design or color palette, di ba? Neoliberal aesthetics evolve and shift, but they always pursue one specific set of goals: economic growth, increased profit, and the valorization of private property. Isang magandang example para i-demonstrate to, graffiti, no? Graffiti is counter-hegemonic kasi yung foundation niya ay tinuturing na illegal, illicit, countercultural. Hindi lang other ang graffiti kasi weird siya, kasi baduy siya, kasi jologs siya. It's literally criminalized. You could literally go to jail for graffiti. This means that it directly counters a core tenet of neoliberal aesthetics and order, which is the valorization or glorification of private property kasi dinidisrespect niya actually ang property, no? In favor of valorizing something else. Maybe the art, the name, di ba? The skill itself, the style. Pero ngayon, nagiging hegemonic na siya kasi nagiging mas palatable na siya. In this particular example, itong nasa pictures na to. Yung nasa left, yung pangit, no? Or yung counter-hegemonic, kumbaga, na graffiti kasi nasa public space siya. Hindi siya exactly considered art kasi wala siya sa space kung saan dapat may art, parang ganon. The one on the right, however, is within a gallery exhibit, no? So nasa isang lugar lang to, labas lang ng pintuan yung nasa left na picture. The one that's on the right, therefore shows us that graffiti and graffiti artists start operating within the logic of elite spaces ng gallery exhibits. Works of graffiti, no, street art, etc. become the property to be valorized instead sa loob ng isang gallery. Or they become ways to increase the value of property while also appropriating the form and style of graffiti away from subcultural niches towards furthering neoliberal ideology and agenda. Great example for this, BGC, di ba? BGC is an example of the aestheticization of urban space to make walking something that's more desirable. Especially sa Pilipinas, no, na tropical country, napakainit. Sa BGC, sobrang car-centric. You could not go there, no, simply through public transport or walking. And it's also oriented towards foreigners kasi foreign investment, business yung sentro niya. At impacted tayo by the climate crisis, no? So BGC street art is a way to make walking more pleasant. Basically, to encourage people to walk more, to go out more, to spend more, to invest more. Pero ang tanong dito, di ba, bakit ba kailangan maging desirable ang paglalakad in particular sa BGC? Kasi pangit yung environment ng BGC. Puro siya matatangkad na building. Wala masyadong greenery doon, di ba? Ang init, mausok kasi puro sasakyan. Kasi epektado tayo ng climate crisis. Pero hindi ba itong mga bagay na to? Tall buildings, the heat, the lack of green spaces, hindi ba dahil sa neoliberalism and capitalism din yun? So parang kailangan niyang i-beautify yung space niya dahil sa mga problemang siya mismo ang gumawa. Parang ganon. Isa pang example, budots. Budots is counter-hegemonic kasi it's a way for people to reassert ethno-linguistic cultures and identities na marginalized usually, na galing sa peripheries, na hindi galing sa mainstream culture ng Pilipinas, kumbaga. It asserts itself against elite tastes and preferences, especially because it emerged from a lower class context, from a grassroots context. Pero ngayon, nagiging hegemonic na si Budots kasi nagamit siya sa political campaign, di ba? Or ginagamit siya ng mainstream stations and shows, Showtime, sa radyo, etc. nang hindi kinekredit yung artist or yung musician or yung producer, which is in this case, usually si DJ Love. So it increases capital for those who are already in elite spaces or elites themselves. Isa pang magandang example siguro, or I would argue no, na itong nangyayaring to sa Budots ay yung gentrification ng Budots. Gentrification siya kasi you bring Budots to spaces teeming with capital, be it economic, social, cultural, while yung benefits no ay hindi usually nagte-trickle down sa mga communities kung saan nagmumula yung Budots mismo or yung art style. So si DJ Love, yung nasa gitna, obviously, deserve niya yung credit, deserve niya yung reputation at recognition. But there is a possibility of interpreting his story as exceptionalism under neoliberal capitalism. Rags to riches story siya, Cinderella story siya. Meanwhile, yung mga fans ng Budots at iba pang involved sa culture ng Budots, hindi sila nakaka-experience nung glorification or respect at credit na to. So, yung mga fans ng Budots na nasa elite spaces, typically hindi din nila alam or nare-recognize yung cultural context ng genre at hindi din sila usually parang baka minsan baduy pa rin or mababa pa rin yung tingin nila sa mga pang-araw-araw na Pilipino noon ironically nag-e-enjoy ng Budots sa jeep, sa kalsada, di ba? So, yung tanong basically para sa akin ay, are people making fun of Bong Revilla because he dances Budots? No? Or are they making fun of Budots because they think that Bong Revilla is cheap and tacky for pandering to the masses? Parang ganyan. So it seems like there's no escape from neoliberal co-optation. Parang hindi tayo makakalaya dito, di ba? Nagsimula yung subcultures as counter-hegemonic hindi lang dahil hindi sila palatable or approved by elites, pero dahil yung values nila directly go against the values of neoliberalism. Pero nagiging cool na sila kasi nare-reproduce na nila yung logic ng neoliberalism, no? Or while it becomes cool, it starts reproducing that logic. Dahil nagsimula na siyang mag-function ayon sa logics ng elite spaces. Nagsimula na siyang sumikat. Mas marami ng taong nakaka-appreciate sa kanya. Mas marami nang nagsaset ng rules at standards sa kanya na hindi naman talaga taal sa subculture na to. But I would argue that even despite the presence or the looming presence of neoliberal co-optation, subcultures, because they're rooted in values, ideas, and beliefs that are fundamentally opposed to the hegemony, will always have the potential to be illegible and of resistance. At their core, yung authority ng subcultures nila, yung pagiging rooted nila sa values na hindi bahagi at pasok sa hegemony ng neoliberalism, ang kapangyarihan na kailangan nilang i-maintain, protektahan at ma-recognize. Graffiti will always be anti-elite because the aim is to reappropriate public space, to interrogate proper uses of space, di ba? And to channel voices that are silent or silenced. Budots will always have the potential to be anti-elite because it emerged from the context of the grassroots, no? Yung aesthetics niya centers Davao or Mindanaoan culture and aesthetics na hindi naman talaga represented sa mainstream natin. Pag sinabi mong Filipino culture, hindi yun madalas yung may isip mo. Hindi Budots, di ba? Baduy siya kasi nagmumula siya sa lower classes, but Budots cannot exist without and if not for the lower class Mindanaoans who created it. The rich cannot make that shit, no? Hindi kayang gumawa ng mayayaman ng budot. Hindi sila pwedeng mag-imbento nun kasi wala sila sa konteksto nun. Sabi ni Chungki, no, laging magkakaroon ng appropriation, ng co-optation. And I think that the aesthetic basically tells us that the structures around us will do their best to keep us in their grasp. They tell us that neoliberalism always attempts to suffuse and fill every nook and cranny of our everyday life in an attempt to colonize everyday life, in an attempt to neutralize threats to the domination of neoliberal ideology. By cloaking its mechanisms of socialization as merely personal preference or individual taste lang, neoliberal ideology and its aesthetics legitimize the idea that freedom is simply in the hands of each person, that we pick and choose our own experiences and struggles and we can choose not to struggle with them, diba? So the exclusion, the negative perception, and even the criminalization of certain practices and cultures show us how aesthetics can threaten current hegemonic political order. And therefore, the popularization and commodification and commercialization of these countercultural objects and practices show us how this hegemony can just as easily subdue the critical and radical power of subcultures. But the way neoliberal hegemony attempts to control these subcultures is simply what Deserto refers to as strategy, no? It's an imposition of space that can never be standardized or truly enforced. The members of subcultures will always possess the agency, the creativity to use tactics, to move about in ways that the structure could not read, could not anticipate, and could not fully, if at all, control and stop. Agents will always be capable of creating these opportunities of creativity to assert their humanity and their power even in the face of neoliberal hegemony. Because it is the agents who know their own context, their own situations. Silang nakakaalam kung paano dumiskarte kasi sila yung alam kung ano yung meron para pwede silang makadiskarte, di ba? To attempt to stop this, to stop creativity, to control and ban aesthetics, is to attempt to confine what we consider to be legitimate, acceptable, and proper ways of being human and being free. So maraming salamat sa pakikinig at sana ang tanong sa atin ngayon, no, ay paano ba tayo kinokontrol ng mga ideas natin ng kung ano ang tama at dapat at proper, ano ang maganda at ano ang pangit sa lipunan. So maraming salamat.